was the most terrifying sound a pilot can hear. It's not an engine alarm. It's not a wind shear warning. It's the sound of your own voice, screaming a command that could destroy your own aircraft. Captain Charles Bennett was at that exact moment. His hands, steady for over 12,000 flight hours, were now slamming the thrust levers into reverse. His feet were stomping on the brakes, risking a fire, a blown tire, or a catastrophic skid that could send a 100-ton jet full of fuel careening off the runway. Why? Because directly in front of his accelerating jet, he saw a woman in a flowing blue dress, walking calmly and directly into his path. She showed no fear. She just looked at him and smiled. The control tower, the cameras, the radar, they all insisted he was seeing things. But Charles knew what he saw was real. This is the true declassified story of a modern-day miracle, a divine intervention by the Virgin Mary that saved nearly 200 lives. And what investigators discovered just minutes later proves that what Charles saw was not a hallucination. It was a warning from heaven. To understand the power of this miracle, you have to understand the man who witnessed it. Captain Charles Bennett wasn't a man prone to fantasies. At 43 years old, he was a veteran of the United States Air Force, a man who had flown F-16s, and was now a respected commercial pilot with an impeccable record. His colleagues called him computer for his ability to process information with cold, hard logic. He believed in physics, in engineering, in the tangible feel of the controls. His world was one of predictable systems and proven facts. That March morning began like any other. A 4:15 a.m. wake-up, a meticulously prepared coffee, a check of the weather, which was perfect, clear skies, excellent visibility, a textbook day for flying. His wife, Sarah, came down to see him off, as she always did. Theirs was a marriage that balanced two worlds. Where Charles saw science, Sarah saw faith. "I'll pray for your safety today," she said, holding his hands. Charles nodded, giving her a kiss on the forehead. But inwardly, he remained a skeptic. After 15 years and 3,000 flawless flights, he was convinced safety was built on training and procedure, not prayer. But what Charles didn't know was that on this day, his logic was about to be shattered forever. His wife's prayers were about to be answered in a way neither of them could have ever imagined. And it all started with a feeling he couldn't explain. Stay with me, because this is where the story takes a strange turn. At the airport, Charles met his co-pilot, the young and competent James Mitchell. Together, they ran through the pre-flight checks with their usual precision. The Boeing 737 was in perfect condition. The 180 passengers boarded, excited children, tired businessmen, an elderly couple heading to see their grandchildren. Lives filled with their own hopes and worries, all trusting the man in the cockpit. As the plane pushed back and began its slow taxi to the runway, Charles felt it. It wasn't nervousness. He never got nervous. It was a profound, unexplainable sense of serenity, a quiet calm that settled over the cockpit. It was comforting, but also unsettling. It felt like a presence. His co-pilot, James, noticed. "Everything all right, Captain?" he asked. Charles simply nodded, but his mind was racing. In all his years, he had never felt anything like it. The tower's voice crackled through the headset. "Cleared for takeoff." Charles repeated the instruction, his voice steady. He guided the massive aircraft onto the center line of the runway. He placed his hands on the thrust levers, a motion he'd performed thousands of times. But this time, his fingers hesitated for a fraction of a second. A silent, inner voice whispered caution. He ignored the whisper and pushed the levers forward. The engines roared to life. The plane began to surge forward. And that's when it happened. At exactly 40 knots, Charles looked up, and his blood ran cold. There she was, a woman no more than 100 feet ahead, walking directly across their path. She wore a long, light blue dress that seemed to glow with its own soft light. A white veil framed a face of serene, impossible beauty. She moved with a supernatural grace, each step deliberate and calm, as if she were strolling through a garden, not the path of a speeding jet. The world went silent for Charles. The deafening roar of the engines became a distant hum. Time itself seemed to stretch and slow down. And then a scent, a delicate, impossible fragrance of roses and unknown flowers, filled the cockpit. It was a scent of pure peace. Her eyes met his. They were deep, ancient, and filled with an infinite compassion. And then she smiled. It was a smile that conveyed a single, undeniable message. You are protected. In that instant, Charles's military training took over. Logic was gone, replaced by a primal need to obey the vision. He cut the power, slammed the brakes, and activated every system designed to stop the massive machine. The aircraft shuddered violently, fighting its own momentum. Passengers were thrown against their seatbelts. Overhead bins rattled. For a few terrifying seconds, chaos reigned. Control tower, VO, confused and frantic. Flight 432. Say again? We show the runway clear. There is no one on the runway. I repeat, our cameras show nothing. Charles stared, panting, at the spot where the woman had been. She was still there, now standing still, her hands raised gently towards the cockpit in a gesture of blessing. He could still see her as clearly as he saw his own instruments. But here's the question that will haunt you. Why could only Charles see her? Was he losing his mind? Or was he the only one chosen to see a divine messenger? The answer, which came 25 minutes later, was more shocking than anyone could have predicted. Don't go anywhere. For 25 agonizing minutes, the flight was dead stopped on the runway. Emergency vehicles swarmed the area, their lights painting the asphalt in red and blue. Security teams combed every inch, finding nothing. Not a footprint, not a thread. In the control tower, frustration was turning to panic. Controller David Wilson, a 12-year veteran, was frantically reviewing camera feeds and radar data. I'm telling you, Bennett, he said over the radio, there's nothing there. The runway is empty. Charles's co-pilot, James, strained his eyes. Captain, I don't see anything. The doubt was palpable. Charles's career, his reputation, hung in the balance. Then a breakthrough. A junior controller, reviewing logs of all air traffic in the region, found an anomaly. A small Cessna 172. Its transponder and radio had failed. It was flying dark, invisible to primary systems, and had strayed directly into the airport's controlled airspace. The flight path data was laid over Charles's intended takeoff path. A deadly intersection was revealed. Narrator, slowly, gravely, if Charles's jet had taken off as scheduled, it would have reached an altitude of about 300 feet at the exact moment the Cessna crossed its path. At that low altitude and high speed, with a small, slow-moving plane appearing out of nowhere, a collision would have been unavoidable. It would have been a fireball in the sky. No survivors. 180 passengers and crew on the jet, plus the pilot of the Cessna, all lost. A stunned silence fell over the control tower. James Mitchell, the co-pilot, turned pale as the reality set in. They hadn't just avoided an embarrassment. They had cheated death itself. A stunned silence fell over the control tower. James Mitchell, the co-pilot, turned pale as the reality set in. They hadn't just avoided an embarrassment. They had cheated death itself. And at that exact moment, Charles looked back at the runway. The woman in blue was gone, vanished. The mysterious scent faded. The world sound returned to normal. The mission was complete. That night, a shaken Charles sat at his kitchen table and described the vision to his wife, Sarah. He described the blue dress, the white veil, the serene face. Sarah listened, her eyes welling with tears. Without a word, she left the room and returned with a small, worn prayer card of Our Lady of Grace. The image was identical. Charles Bennett, the man of science, the computer, broke down. He had witnessed a miracle. The Virgin Mary had physically placed herself on that runway to stop him, to save them all. From that day on, he was a changed man. He still flew with precision, but now he also flew with a silent prayer. His co-pilot, James, though he hadn't seen her, had felt her presence, and it rekindled a faith he thought he'd lost. This story forces us to ask a profound question. How many tragedies are silently averted by divine intervention? How many prayers from a loving wife, a worried mother, or a faithful child summon a protection we cannot see. If you believe in the power of Mary's intercession, if this story has touched your heart, I need you to do something for me right now. Type just one word in the comments below: miracle. Let's create a powerful testament to our shared faith. Let's show the world that we believe her miracles are real. And if your faith feels strengthened today, please help us on our mission to share these stories. Our goal is to reach 150 likes on this video. If you believe in God's power and want others to hear this testimony, your like is a powerful way to spread this message. But the story doesn't end here. The Blessed Mother's grace touches the youngest and most vulnerable among us. In our next video, we share the incredible documented story of how she appeared to an 8-year-old boy who was given just hours to live in a hospital. Doctors called his recovery medically inexplicable. To see how Mary saved this little boy while he was fighting with death, watch that story right here on our channel. Click on it now, and please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story of hope. Thank you for watching. Never stop believing. Never stop praying. You're not alone.